Hello everyone, welcome to Jump Up Supercast, the only podcast on the internet where we're only talking about Dota this week. I'm Will, and joining me as always, Ills.
Hello.
And Muzamil.
Personally, I prefer League. Big League of Legends guy, actually.
Oh, and who's your favorite?
Yeah,
Meepo.
exactly.
Meepo, everyone's favorite. How are we doing this week, boys?
I've survived another week. I haven't killed myself yet, so there's that.
I mean,
All we can ask for.
That's a good thing, yeah.
Depending on your perspective, yeah.
Sure. Normally, like you said, you have Brandon to defer to, Ills, when I asked that question. But
Yep.
Brandon has opted to pray at the church of Tom Brady rather than record this podcast.
He abandoned us for Tom Brady. Can you believe that?
I can't.
Believe that? I can't.
Yeah, it's very possible. Very easy to believe.
And Saf, I believe, is on a mission for His Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. So,
Probably.
Sure.
I think he's
three-man
involved in
crew.
Parliament, personally.
Is that the new PM?
If you rearrange the letters in Saf, it spells out Boris Johnson. It's very
Oh.
interesting.
Holy shit. Conspiracy confirmed.
But, three live crew here. That's us. Except we're not live, and there are three of us. But we have, of course, video game news to get to. This is a video game news week where there's just a lot of, weird video games getting announced, right? None of it's, crazy, but it's all stuff that I think is interesting. But before we do all of that, I do want to get to this story because you hate to start off with a little bit of a bummer drummer, but I'm going to. Because there was news headlines about, hey guys, Telltale Games is back. We talked about this last year on the podcast when they got shut down. And everyone was like, whoa, really? And then we found out later, the name Telltale Games is back. Essentially, another company bought the rights to the name, LCG Entertainment, as well as some of its back catalog and some of its original IPs that they worked on, which is not a lot, but some. And basically, it would be largely a new studio, but they offered freelance contracts to former employees if they want to. Which is to say, if you're living in San Francisco, probably not a deal you're going to want to take up.
Because you're not getting any sort of benefits or commitment that you'll be able to work there for much long or anything like that. So yeah, it's not great.
Yeah.
So is this some weird Atari thing or how just some holdings company was like, hey, we bought the name and this is us like we've always been.
Aren't they partly owned by a company in China or something?
That sounds believable.
Yeah.
Almost everything is, honestly. What isn't partially owned by China,
But I think it's interesting because we talked a lot about sort of the fate of a bunch of different stuff, right?
It's been a year.
About how the last season of The Walking Dead was going to get funded by Robert Kirkman, and then, Netflix owned the rights to Minecraft Story Mode. And so sort of this whole saga has been not only a thing of unfortunately a game company going down, right? And we talked about that then, but of what happens when it does, and how it's this weird dandelion where a bunch of different seeds just go everywhere and it's hard to keep track of, THQ, Nordic, we mentioned a couple weeks ago, very much similar thing. They just pull in scraps from everywhere of companies that have gone away and IPs that are not being used, But I think it's important because, once again, we talk a lot about, knowing the people that make games, paying attention to where they come from, right, on this podcast. And this is just another instance of that where someone, they want to play on you a little bit, right? They want you to think, oh, the next time that there's a Telltale game, it's a new Telltale game. But this is a different company, this is a different thing. They could still make good games. But don't look at it in that perspective, Yeah,
you got to judge them freshly now. You can't just let them rely on their laurels because it's not the same company anymore. They're just posing.
Yeah. And so that's interesting. I don't know if there's a lot more to say, but I just want to lead off with that because then we can get to games that were announced. For example, a company that is seemingly not resting on their laurels, or a development team, is the Yakuza team, who has announced Yakuza 7. And there was a lot of questions walking into this one because for the last, I don't know, I think it comes up to 10 games, basically. You've played as one character as the primary protagonist, Kazuma Kiryu. This is the first time that that's not going to be the case. He will be in the game, period, right?
Wait, has he done
know.
cocaine? Is that what happened?
No.
They just wrapped up his story beautifully, but this is not a judgment situation.
No. Though, I mean, fingers crossed that doesn't happen again. But now they have a new guy. His name is I forget his name. Either way,
Ichiban
the big
something.
Ichiban Kasuga. There we go. But when they announced the game, they said he's the new character and he's a big fan of Dragon Quest. And I said, what a weird thing to introduce your character with. But it made a little bit more sense like a minute later when they showed us gameplay and it was turn-based RPG elements. And by that I mean it's just a turn-based RPG battle system. Yakuza, I think, before was known for having action-based gameplay, right? Sort of a beat-em-up type of feel. But they said, hey, it's a new character. We don't want him to just be doing Kiryu's moves, right? Because that would feel strange. And we wanted it to be a new weird moment for the series. And so they've opted for this new battle system where you have a party of 4 people, seemingly. And it is it's a straight-up RPG, which is funny for a couple of reasons. But
I mean, so I can't believe they turned this game into an RPG. That is an insane dramatic shift. To go from like action-based combat for literally like 10 entries to be like, surprise, we're a turn-based RPG is like, is there a more dramatic shift in a series? Like, sure, like Final Fantasy did the inverse, right? They went from turn-based to like
I was
action.
just about to say that, yeah.
Yeah, but like, you never see it. It's like, because I guess it's always seen as, turn-based combat is
outdated, basically, yeah.
Yeah. But it is funny to see like this game that's been action focused from the beginning to go the inverse and like, okay, now we're turn based, inspired by Dragon Quest. That's really fucking funny. Like it's just like this is a wild shift any series in this. It'd be insane. Like what a crazy thing. So
yeah,
and it's also funny because right now Sega is also sort of revamping Sakura Wars, which went from being a turn based strategy game to being
an action game.
A more action game, right?
And, and that's kind of what happens, right? Like, we saw that with Valkyria when they made that Valkyria... Before 4... Revolution, yeah. Azure Revolution or whatever, yeah. And then, I feel like we see that pretty often, right? Going from turn-based to action, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is like, can you think of something that's happened the other way around?
And especially it being a main numbered entry, right? Because Yakuza has, in the past, been willing to give spin-offs, right? There was the one where it was zombies, and that wasn't great, but it was clearly a side thing, right? There's the one that's set in like ancient in like feudal Japan, you know. This one's like, no, this is 7. This is it.
This is it. This is a mainline entry, and it's like just come. And to be fair though, like they just wrapped up a story, right? Of like almost 2 decades long story now. They've been going since the PS2. Starting fresh with a brand new protagonist, might as well use that opportunity to just shake everything up, right? Like,
yeah. And I wanted to find Nagoshi, who's the director of Yakuza. He also did Monkey Ball back in the day, which is such a funny connection. I always love to bring that up. But he talked about the reaction because naturally there has been longtime fans that are annoyed at this, right? To say this isn't what I like from the series.
People are annoyed in 2019. Shocker.
Hard to believe. The story of the summer is that. But he had a response that I thought it was generally well intentioned, right? He says, we sort of knew this was going to be a little bit of a reaction, right? We understand, and we get it because it means you're passionate. But we ask you to put a little bit of faith in us. And the one thing we put above everything else is that we don't want to make a boring game. Right. And so for us, we've evolved this system so much. We've split it into multiple styles. We put it back together. We had multiple characters. We sort of felt like we had done everything we could. We want to try this new thing.
Yeah. And let me be clear. I said it seems like turn-based is outdated, but I don't actually feel that way. I love turn-based combat. It's just that just seems like the progression. So don't prejudge the fact that it's turn-based. Like it could still be a great game.
Like I mean, I'm actually super into this. Like I'm all for this. I really like turn-based games anyway.
Yeah.
And Yakuza has always been something I've been interested in. I mean, I've bought literally every goddamn game on the PS4. I haven't played them yet though.
Oh,
But
wow.
like, this seems like a good opportunity to jump in though, because I'm more inclined to turn based. It's a brand new setting. It's like this seems like a very cool jumping point. So I'm interested to try this out. And I like I said, like I don't think that like I don't agree with the thing that turn-based combat is outdated. Like in fact, I would prefer Final Fantasy would go back to.
Yeah. I'm playing 15 right now, and I'm really fucking annoyed by the combat. Like it's okay, but it's not as good as it used to be.
Yeah.
And you did mention there that there is a new city, which is actually, I mean, if you ever played Yakuza before, that sounds like, of course, right? But Kamurocho has been the home for the series for a long time, since the first game, all the way through to 6. They would have other areas you would go to, but you always come back to Kamurocho, right? And so like it's weird, by the 6th game, you know every single street, and there was a real novelty to it because you would see it evolve. Because every Yakuza game is set in the year it comes out, except for 0, which was in the 80s. But to see the city change with time. But I think that once again, this is the moment where they sort of say, "Hey, we want to throw that away too, right? We want to have it be a moment where we're going to make a new place that will become that sort of new home for the series."
I mean, that's pretty brave because, they've been relying on those reused assets for...
I mean, it's how they were able to make a yearly game, Yakuza's been yearly for a long time, and hasn't suffered a lot in quality because of smart asset reuse. So yeah, like you said. And then the one other thing is that this is always such an interesting thing to manage whenever you have a reaction of people being mad, right? Because he did say, hey man, like, we're trying this out, but we're not locked in forever, right? If the RPG system, we could iterate on it. We could go back to action games. We could do what, like we're not beholden to anything. And so we always want to leave our options open, right?
Yeah, of course.
Which is which is an honesty I respect, but also it sort of like gives the people that are complaining sort of like the instruction of like, oh, maybe if you're loud enough, you'll get what you want. And I think that's always a weird game to play on with people, with online discourse, because you never want to have it feel like you're caving into the worst inclinations of people and rewarding bad behavior.
Yeah.
But also, you're making a video game, and maybe people just don't like the thing. It's okay to change it,
Yeah.
So I think it's always a weird balance. But I wish that people would take that judgment after it is out rather than before.
Well, it makes sense to give yourself as much leeway as you need. I mean, Don't box yourself in for any reason.
Holy shit, Yokohama is so far from Kamurocho. Are we even gonna go to Kamurocho this time?
Maybe not. Probably not, I would imagine,
it's like
actually.
On the other side of the island. It's like I'm looking at a map. It's like 400 kilometers away.
Yeah.
Pretty far.
So I think that's all really cool, though. And then one other thing I think that's worth mentioning is that obviously, Judgment is a game that came out earlier this year. We mentioned it. It did better. They said just last week it did better than they expected, and it might continue as a series. So there might be a sort of a split where Yakuza becomes this thing where they experiment, and Judgment still has that action style gameplay. Because this is actually, I think, is a neat fix. Because when I saw Judgment, I thought, how will they make sure to differentiate these two series, if Judgment does.
It's funny that they decided to like go with the new style with Yakuza and not like with their new series, I think that's kind of funny. You would think it'd be the other way around, right? Like, hey, let's try something new. Okay, let's do a new IP. No, it's like Judgment has kind of become this offshoot of Yakuza. I mean, it always was, I guess. But it's like, hey, now this is like, that classic Yakuza style. It still exists in Judgment, and I think that's cool.
Yeah. And it's coming out early, I think in January 2020, so very fast turnaround in Japan, and then later and also in Korea, and then later in 2020 in the West. Probably like Judgment was around 6 months turnaround.
And that was fully dubbed. Like they fully dubbed that game. So like this game, Yakuza only gets subs, right?
So far they have, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean if this is I wouldn't expect longer than a 6 month turnaround, but I think like we'll be playing it by August, like at the latest.
Which is cool, that's within a year now. I mean, if you're in Japan, it's even less. 4 months. To go
from like, not getting localized, to this, it's like that's good. Mm-hmm. It's cool to see that like Yakuza's been successful in the West, and So.
Then we had some interesting news in terms of re-releases this week. One of them was at the GameStop conference where they have all the managers, and who knows if this is the last one, but
they still have those.
They still do. It's amazing. We got the first. There was like a demo for The Last of Us 2 that got shown there. And it's like the second time we've ever seen gameplay for that game, and it was only for GameStop managers. They did a similar thing for Red Dead last year. So companies still treat it seriously. You know,
they have a strange amount of clout, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, I think they are the biggest games retailer. I think like the most amount of physical games, I guess, now gets all. But so I guess it's still a little, like, you know, push those pre-orders, get those managers hyped so they start pushing those pre-orders.
Yeah. I mean, but the other thing they announced was that there's a collection of Aladdin and The Lion King, which is coming out. Conveniently, the two movies that got live action remakes this year. The Dumbo game apparently doesn't happen, but come out later this year. And this I think is so interesting because one, it reignited a decades old like schoolyard argument between the Genesis and the SNES version. Originally, we thought it was going to be both. Not, it's just the Genesis version in this one. Yeah. But they have the original soundtracks, and they are doing bug fixes, which is actually wild. Like, there was a bunch of collision detection problems that apparently in the original Genesis Aladdin that are being fixed in this game.
Oh, that's cool.
Which I think is cool, like, go back in the ROM and do that, you know? There's more effort than you would think.
Wait, so they're just re-releasing old games?
Yes.
Okay, just making
this
sure.
It's like remastered. It's like, so it's by Digital Eclipse, who's done a couple of Mega Man collections, for example.
They did the first one, which is people generally view more positively than the second.
And like to give Digital, and there's also a whole bunch of bonus features in here, like the ability to like rewind and also forward the gameplay, so like, you know, you can just have the game play itself if like some part is too hard or whatever,
or if you want to do a specific part, you know,
or for a specific part, and then like and then they're adding just a whole bunch of like bonus features, like
behind the scenes making out stuff,
and Digital Eclipse like they put out a good package, you know. I'll say their emulation quality like isn't like it doesn't hit like M2 standards, you know, who have done, for example, like the Sega Ages games on the Switch.
I'll never forgive them.
Yeah. But they do put together a good package, you know, and so I'm looking forward to this. I've never played either one of these games, so maybe I'll try this out.
I think there was a certain age group of people that like strongly reacted to this,
I know. There's people like very nostalgic for both of these games. I've seen like there's
dweebs.
Like,
they're called dweebs.
I mean Brandon.
I'm not arguing against that. But yeah, so that's cool, and that's just a thing that's like Disney has such a weird relationship with video games post closing Disney Interactive, right? Because it's just been entirely handing things out, you know.
Yeah.
And so sort of like the only way that like there's no Mickey Mouse game coming out for like a console, you know, it's only in mobile now. And most of their movies like don't get things either. But this is like what they're, you know, they had the Disney Afternoon collection come out a couple of years ago. You know, DuckTales was on that, Speak of the Devil, a Game Club game. And now they're sort of doing this. So they're at least willing to leverage more of their back catalog, which I think is good. There's a lot of IPs that people care a lot about, obviously within the corporation of Walt Disney, and if it just all got left in the, you know, to go be dusty in some corner in some vault, that would be a bummer.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to have all the games, as many games as possible, readily available. I mean, I never want to see any games not, you know, become, you know, ungettable or unplayable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's always cool to see them like not only like re-release them, but then like enhance them, make them better than they ever were before, you know.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's always a cool thing.
And it's funny was you brought up the work that they did on the Mega Man collections, because we got another one announced this week.
Whoa!
How about that? I don't know if this got listed on the PSN store first.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this was maybe going to be a September Direct announcement, because a very similar thing happened back September of last year, where Mega Man 11 was going to get a demo that was going to get announced at a Direct, but then it got leaked beforehand and they just did it anyways. But it's the Mega Man 0/ZX Legacy Collection. A lot of words there.
These are some good ass games.
Yes,
I will tell you.
This is. I know that there's a percent of people that were mad that Battle Network wasn't next, but you're still getting like a lot of really good games, and I think a lot of games that people didn't play. You know?
Yeah. I mean, so my hot take here with the Zero games, I think as a package, the 4 Zero games are better than like the X series. Because the X series has like 2 really great games, and then it has like some middling, and then some really shit.
What are the 2 great games? Are you gonna say 1 and 4?
Yeah, 1 and 4.
Yeah, okay, that's decent.
Yeah, and then and then like some pretty good, and then there's just some garbage.
Yeah,
you know?
that's true.
0, 1 through 4, I think all are great, just like very good, or at least very good.
And ZX is really good. I didn't play Advent.
I haven't played ZX actually.
ZX is really good.
Yeah, I like ZX.
It has like Metroid-like elements going to it, right?
Yeah.
As far as I've heard. Yeah, and that's cool with Mega Man because most of them are kind of strict platformers, so to kind of see that branch out into here's exploration stuff. Cool that Capcom figured out how to do like dual screen and touch screen stuff like on these systems that do not have those features.
Yeah,
because I always thought, because when they started doing these collections, when they started doing the Mega Man X collection in particular, I was like, oh, okay, I'm kind of thinking we're just gonna start seeing most of these re-released. But God, those DS games are never gonna what are they just screwed? But no, like they figured out a way to bring those DS games over, which means maybe Star Force is a possibility at some point.
Maybe. I think that it's funny. Because I did invoke Battle Network, right? Because in terms of platformers, we're sort of getting to the end point, of 2D Mega Man. It would be weird if they did 9 and 10 as their own collection. But either way, like I think it is worth mentioning that they do. There's a couple new things to this too. One thing I think that a lot of people I heard say was that Mega Man Zero is like Mega Man games are in general can be difficult, but Mega Man Zero games are also, I think, even harder than the average. I would say.
Yes.
So they do have a more. They're adding in a new casual scenario mode, which I think is just an easier mode, basically.
Yeah, like when you fall in a pit, for example, it'll like bloop you back up. And stuff like that. Which I mean, like I know some people get mad at like accessibility features like that, but it's like you don't have to use them. Just don't use them.
Yeah, the original version is still there.
It's still there.
And there's now a save system, so you can save mid-level, which is good. Right. Just especially since it's going to be on all platforms, including Switch. Right. You may be able to turn that off while you're playing it and move on with your life more easily.
Yep. Right. Yep. I'm excited to play these games again, and I'm excited to play ZX for the first time.
I have to play Mega Man 04 and ZX Advent, so that's good.
Yeah.
This is a cool package, and also it's cool. It's only $30. Because with the Mega Man X collection, like I like that they're doing these collections, but like they split that into 2, so like the total was like 40. It's cool to them just scrunch up 60. I guess average per game price is exactly the same, but
I mean that first part of the X collection was way better than the second part.
Yeah. It was like there was one way better collection than the other. Yeah. And then, but like it's nice that like I really thought that. I figured a Zero collection would come at some point, but I really thought the ZX games were just like going to be forgotten to time, And so it's cool that they're just throwing that in there. That's very neat. It's good that I mean, we got a new Mega Man game pretty recently, right? And then now Capcom is making sure, hey, all these old fucking Mega Man games, you can play them on these platforms. We literally just need Battle Network and Star Force now, I think, and then
Mighty
Legends.
Number 9, don't forget.
Oh, and Legends. Can't forget Legends. Mighty Number 9.
Oh, man. They need to re-release Legends. God.
That has to happen. I guess, no, but that comes with baggage of like, oh, well, are you going to finish the story?
Or if Legends 3.
Fucking finish the story. What the fuck?
I don't think they're going to finish it, though. So
Damn.
It's just going to be a radio drama. It's going to be like Final Fantasy X-3.
I mean, maybe they will, because I do think I think a new Mega Man X game is going to be the next like new Mega Man game. Because I feel like Mega Man 11 did pretty well, and X seems like kind of next in line to get something new. But Legends, maybe.
If we all put our hands together and believe.
Justice for that canceled 3DS game, man.
Yeah. That's fine.
It's not fine.
It's a scab, you know. What's that Katy Perry clip? People ask you if you're fine, and you say you're fine, but you're not fine, but you can't tell them why. That's every time people bring up Mega Man Legends 3.
I don't know anything about Katy Perry. I'm sorry.
It's this one. I keep hearing the clip in other things. It makes me laugh every time though. But that is Mega Man. You know what game was inspired by Mega Man? Shovel Knight.
Shovel Knight.
And Yacht Club, the makers of Shovel Knight, had a collection. Not a collection, excuse me. Basically a presentation.
I mean, they literally you could tell they studied Nintendo Directs when they were putting together this presentation. Including the verbiage and everything that they were using. It's really funny, but
yeah. But they have they had a lot of follow-up announcements, right? Mm-hmm. Which was pretty cool. There was a confirmation for King of Cards coming out, as long with Shovel Knight Showdown. If you know what these are, way back in the day when Shovel Knight was just a Kickstarter game, they greenlit 3 expansions. This is the final of the 3. If you bought Shovel Knight Treasure Trove on Switch or on any other platform, you get this with it. And it is basically a new campaign where you play as King Knight. He has a couple things. The biggest thing that I saw was a shoulder bash. Gave me a little bit of Wario Land vibes to it, because it's a greedy individual who shoulder bashes things. But these things are always insane to me, because I think for Yacht Club, they went... I remember when Plague of Shadows came out back in, I think, 2015, 2016. They said, this got out of hand. We want to scale it back in the future, right? And then it got even more out of hand with Spectre of Torment and now King of Cards. Yeah,
like they really because they said oh my god, like Plague of Shadows, we ended up like doing way too much. We just the scope got so big because we just had so many ideas, and maybe next time we're gonna don't expect like this much. And then Spectre of Torment was fucking ginormous, even exceeded Plague of Shadows. And then, and now we have King of Cards kind of doing the same thing. Which also has as the name indicates, a whole card game now inside of it. I think, I mean, clearly, when they set up the Kickstarter, the plan was like, if you ever played Mega Man Powered Up on the PSP, it's like, okay, it's the same game, but, you play as this new character who has a different ability set, right? And then it just turns into, oh no, we just decided to completely redo the level design to intricately fit this new moveset that we've created. New story. And with a new story and just new bosses. It is insane. Like, way beyond what it ever should have been, to be honest. But it's cool. Like, it's such a cool thing to do, especially if you owned Treasure Trove from the beginning. When it first came out, it was a $15 game. And even when you bought that $15 game, if you bought that game for $15, you're getting King of Cards for free. You're getting Shovel Knight Showdown for free. Granted, now they've bumped up the price to be more fair to them, right? It is now a $40 game, justifiably so. But of course, you could buy all the individual stuff now, like for $10 each, I think. But yeah.
Did they give a release date for this?
December. So it's coming out this year. I mean, I'm a little sweating because, Yacht Club has never been one to hit dates, like, ever.
But they've been reticent to give this a date.
Yeah.
So I think they maybe learned a little bit, hopefully, right? About, don't give a day until you're close.
Yeah. And I think, December, who knows if that'll slip into 2020, but, putting together this presentation feels like, okay, this is about done. This is pretty. I think it's pretty much ready to come out. And especially because they have a retail release planned. It feels like okay. They're, if anything, the release date is indecent. I think probably King of Cards is done and Showdown is done, and just the process of printing those cartridges and discs and whatever. But we'll probably finally finish the Shovel Knight saga.
Yeah, I might finally go back and actually play the other expansions. I only ever played the base game. But yeah.
And there is one other thing that is coming with that same time, also in December, is, as you mentioned, Showdown, which is a multiplayer battle mode where you can play as every member of the Order of No Quarter, which are the bosses in the game. as well as even more characters. The one they revealed in this was Mona, who is from Plague of Shadows primarily, but she was also in the base game as like a little member in the town. But she's great. I love her. She's awesome, and I'm super happy she's playable here. But like, this is just another thing that you're just like, people keep asking, like, where's Shovel Knight 2? Why are we not have Shovel Knight 3D or whatever? And it's like, I mean, you can't say they haven't been working these last 3 years, you know? Like,
yeah, I mean, they made Shovel Knight 2 and 3 and are about to release Shovel Knight 4, basically, you know? Like,
yeah.
Is Showdown online multiplayer?
It's not, which is my biggest bummer about it.
Womp womp.
Yeah. It's the thing that's, we're just like, I get why, because indie, you know, learning how to code for online is a whole other skill set you have to learn, basically, if you're an indie team. But it goes from a thing that, like, I would love to play to the thing that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna like probably do, like, there is story modes for each character. There's a little ladder and little dialogue between them as they go through their arcade modes, basically. But I'm probably gonna do that and then just, you know, move on.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, it's included as part of King of Cards. It's included as part of Treasure Trove, so you're not paying extra for that if you've got that. So, then they did one other thing. Two other things, actually. There's a board game, which is currently, I think when you hear this, the Kickstarter is over, but it recently got funded. So if you are interested in physical games, I was about to say physical video games, which is not right, then that is there for you. And then they announced a new project at the end. It is Shovel Knight Dig, which is a very neat collaboration between Yacht Club and a company called Nitrome. Yes. Who are most well known, I think, for probably making Bomb Chicken back in the day. I think they also made like Ice Vikings was like another game. But I mean, it takes a very sort of logical step for Shovel Knight, which is like, what if we put him in a digging game? You know,
absolutely.
When I saw this, I first thought it was a crossover with SteamWorld Dig.
Yeah,
but it is not.
I mean, it feels like a little bit more action oriented than
inspired by it, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, definitely more action oriented. It looks cool. It's like, I think it's cool that like Yacht Club is basically saying like, so they're not making this themselves, right? It's kind of like a Nintendo setup when they farm out, like, say, Luigi's Mansion 3 to Next Level Games, right? I think it's cool that Yacht Club is basically able to do this with Shovel Knight. Be like, hey, you know, let's find some talented developer to make a game in the Shovel Knight franchise. So Shovel Knight, because you don't want Shovel Knight to die, right? He's like people love this guy, right?
Sure. He made it into Smash Brothers. It'd be weird to let him die.
He's in Smash Brothers, yeah.
He's everywhere. He's in Rumble.
So, rather than letting the IP die, because I assume Yacht Club themselves, probably after making so much fucking Shovel Knight in the last 5 years, I think they want to do something else that is not Shovel Knight, right? Obviously, I'm just speculating here, but like, I would assume after doing so much Shovel Knight, they want to probably move on. But like, don't let the franchise die, right? Hey, here's these guys. They make good games. Let's have them make a game with Shovel Knight. And also boosts the profile of that smaller indie developer, which we've seen Yacht Club do pretty, like, this is like the third or fourth time they've basically done this. This idea of like, hey, we're kind of a big name in the indie space now, right? Yeah. Let's use our name to boost the profile of other developers. They did it with Inti Creates when they published the physical version of Azure Striker Gunvolt for them. You know, they did this with a game that's coming soon, which I'm actually surprised that it wasn't here. But they're publishing a game called Cyber Shadow, this ninja.
Oh yeah, I wanted to play that game.
Looking game. Yeah. And then now they're doing this, like, hey, here's Nitro making this, you know, as well as, you know, letting so many fucking people use Shovel Knight in their game as a cameo or as whatever, you know. I think it's just cool that Yacht Club does this thing of like, let's boost the profile of other indie developers, you know. Just a very neat thing they do.
And I think it's interesting because, I mean, sort of like you said too, I mean, Brandon's made jokes about this in the past, but like Shovel Knight gets around as a character, you know, like if you're making an indie game, you got a Kickstarter. If you call up Yacht Club, they're willing to let you use them probably, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is cool. But I think, like you said, as indies get bigger, right? Like, you know, I would say that this generation has, on the whole, has been really huge for them, right? Last gen, they sort of came on the scene, but they've only gotten bigger since. Sort of having this community of of support for each other, I think is really interesting and cool. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, there was one other little thing there that I can use to maybe transition to another thing I wanted to shout out, just because I think it's cool. Last year they announced this for Shovel Knight, but it's now fully implemented in the game, which is I don't know the official term for it, but essentially there's a body swap mode in Shovel Knight, where every character has a masculine and a feminine sprite for it. You can swap them all as you see fit. So Shovel Knight and you can also choose pronouns for characters, right? So Shovel Knight can be a he, a her, a they, or non-specific, and same for every other character. So Shovel Knight can be a girl rescuing a girl, it can be a girl rescuing a guy, it could be any option, and I think that that's really cool.
Yes. I mean, it's a very neat thing. I mean, because this was part of the Kickstarter, but not in the way it was implemented, right? Just this idea of, hey, let's make female versions of Shovel Knight and let's just gender swap, basically, right? But then they're like, no, hey, let's go further. Let's make this very inclusive. Let's ask the LGBT community, hey, what's the best way to implement this, and make it more inclusive and kind of basically tailor the experience to how you want it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's cool that they do that. And at first it was just you could use the male and female pronouns, but then in this update they added the they them pronouns, and I think it's cool to just be inclusive like that. That's good on you, Yacht Club.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And I mean, just really briefly, I have a friend. He is gay. He has a husband. He played a game. He played Shovel Knight when this guy added in, and he was like, it's nice that there's a video game where I'm a prince saving a prince, basically. There's always the thing of the hero saves the princess, but Shovel Knight's not even. Shield Knight's not a princess, right? But the thing of oh, that's you and that's me, and we can self-insert, right? Even in this very basic story, that's nice, and it's not a thing that a lot of LGBT people get. So cool there. Also doing that this week is Cyberpunk 2077. So from an indie game to one of the biggest AAAs you got, as sort of a response to concerns that people had. Now they have very much the same sort of system where instead of you picking male and female in your thing, you pick masculine and feminine body type, and then you can change it as you see fit. And also have pronoun stuff be picked.
Does that address the concern? I thought it was more about the marketing stuff in the game or whatever.
Well, there's been 3 different instances of it, right?
It's more than one thing. Okay.
Yeah.
And it also goes back to GOG.com, which is owned wholly by Cyberpunk. By CD Projekt Red. They've had some transphobic kind of stuff going on. So people have this general kind of, I guess you could say, distrust with CD Projekt Red when it comes to these issues. But so this is kind of being hey, we listen to feedback,
yeah.
And so you go, I guess. Sorry.
No, so I was as a sort of it is sort of just because so much of it too was also the world of Cyberpunk is very transhumanism, right?
Yeah.
It's weird that you're in this game where your head can be a big robot, just circuitry, but you can't have options besides just picking guy or girl. That's the thing where people sort of say even more so than a lot of other games, this fits into the themes of this game more.
Yeah,
right.
And that's basically what I was gonna say. It was basically this is exactly what Will said. It's this just fits the concept of the game more. Because in this weird dystopian future where hey, you can enhance and change your body any way you want, right? It doesn't really make sense for the setting of the game to limit you to that male female. It just for this world it just makes sense. You are who you want to be. That is the point of this game in a way. And so it makes sense to have this change in how they
and obviously when the game comes out there will be people that will with any piece of media there will be interpretations, and there will be people that will find there's going to be conversations about whether or not it succeeds in the themes it's aiming for, right? But this is, I think,
of course,
better than zero. They're starting from a place that I think makes just the game itself more interesting.
Yeah.
Even if you are not a member of any of the affected groups in real life, it still is good, I think, to have in the video game.
Yeah, of course.
So, all right. Yeah. So we'll see where it goes from there. To sort of transition to our last news story of the podcast. We have a game that, also has its own history with having LGBT characters in it after the fact, which is Overwatch, right? And you say, what are we talking about with Overwatch? Is it a new character? And what about a new port, baby? On Amazon, there was a listing for a officially licensed by both Nintendo and Blizzard case for the Switch with Overwatch branding all over it. And sort of this has been enough to sort of let people come out and say, hey, Overwatch is like nearly almost certainly coming to Switch, right? Like this feels like maybe a September direct announcement. Who knows? It could be further down the line, but the date listed on Amazon was in September for the case to launch, at least.
Yeah.
Before it was
all
taken down.
games come to Switch. Let's go.
I mean, there had been a lot of people saying at the beginning of the year, basically like, hey, like, Switch may not get like these day and date ports or whatever, but you can kind of expect the system to have the basically the best of this generation end up on this platform, and just as as sales have been so good and what have you, it's like, okay, you're gonna start seeing more and more third-party games on the platform, and we saw that with The Witcher 3 earlier this year. Overwatch makes sense. I think this is a game that, like, you ask anybody, you look at Overwatch, you're like, yeah, that's something that appeals to the Nintendo audience, right? If anything, like, the biggest problem here would be, okay, well, how does it run? How does it look? Like, can Blizzard handle adding another platform to have to patch and, update and balance and blah, 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 especially one that's so much weaker than PS4 and Xbox One. But if they get that technical issue sorted, and as we've seen with games like The Witcher, like, if someone wants a game on the Switch, they will make sure to get it on the damn Switch, Like, they'll figure out a way. With how well Diablo 3 did last year, it makes sense that, like, hey, yeah, let's greenlight Overwatch ASAP,
And it does feel like a game that you can imagine Nintendo win after,
Yes,
like,
for sure.
Last year we had there was a special pack in Diablo Switch.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they only had that and like Pokemon. Yeah. So like, that's I mean,
Diablo 3 got a big push, and like it ended up paying off because it is the best selling, at least by revenue, third party game on the Switch in the US, which is like,
holy shit, really? Wow.
Yeah. Diablo 3 did stupid well on the Switch. I mean, maybe Crash sold a little bit more because it's a $40 game. It's
$30.
But but that aside, but like, I mean, but still, like, Diablo 3 did like just stupid well on the platform, and so you can see why they would be like, all right, yeah, let's get this done. Blizzard game, I think Blizzard just in general has this, like, there's a feel to the games that I feel like very much like Nintendo fans can appreciate, kind of thing,
Like a special kind of polish, you mean?
Yeah, like, that polish, exactly. And in general, we're just seeing more and more third-party games. Like, no matter how late they are, we're just seeing more and more of the best. The best of this generation has been slowly making its way to the platform. Like, what's besides Call of Duty, Madden, and GTA 5 / Red Dead? Like, what are the mega hits that Switch needs to hit? Like, that list is drying out slowly but surely.
Yeah.
And I think that's cool.
I mean, it went from just to like give you a perspective on how things have shifted, right? Because even I think Reggie, before he left, was sort of like the third year is when you're going to see a lot of these games start showing up, right?
He fucking nailed
Switch.
that prediction.
He did not lie, because I mean, going from the last year of the Wii U, right, which was obviously dire straits, was I think there was 26 new titles where they got physical releases in the year for that system, right? And now it is, I think, it's like 2 below the PS4. I think PS4 is at like 270 something.
So to add more context, so it's almost 300. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's almost 300 for PS4 releasing in 2019. Almost 300. It's just below that for Switch, right? This is 2019 is the most physical releases that PS4 has ever gotten in its entire life. So 6 years later, 6 years down the line, it has now seen like this many games. In Switch's third year, it is matching that number of physical releases coming out this year. That's insane. Like, I mean, that just kind of goes to show you how big the uptake has been with third parties for this system. Like, just so many games are coming out on this thing.
Wait, 300 fucking games? What the
300
fuck?
physical games. That's not even counting eShop.
If we count eShop, it's insane.
I'm confused. Like,
So-
I know maybe like 10 games that came out.
Yeah, no. So in 2019, it is projected that almost 300 physical games are coming to the Switch. And yeah, that's a big. I mean, that's more than every other year of the PS4. You know.
Yeah. Which is
like the king of third-party support, right? That is where all games are on the PlayStation 4.
Damn.
Now, it should be worth mentioning that part of it is that a lot of smaller titles are now getting actually physical releases, right?
Sure.
There's actually been an uptake in that.
And I think that also kind of buffs up the Switch a little bit in a way of like, there's a lot of games that have not been viable necessarily physically that are thriving on Switch, you know? I mean, there's just this huge market for, like, indie games getting physical releases, you know? Mid-budget games are thriving on the Switch where they are not thriving anywhere else, you know? It has really become this platform that it's like, it's really had this very diverse lineup of, you have the big Nintendo hits, but then you also have, like, the middle-tier Nintendo stuff, but even beyond Nintendo, like, you have mature stuff like Mortal Kombat and Doom and The Witcher, but then you also have games like Hollow Knight and, Cuphead, but games even smaller than that, and games in the middle of that, like, just Red Faction is coming to the platform, right?
But then you also have. And
it's just like, it's like, I'm saying,
crossword
but like,
puzzles.
It's just, there's so much on the system, so not just so, but just a very diverse array of games that have been arriving. Yeah. And it's just the ecosystem is thriving, you know?
Yeah. And so I think, sort of going forward, I just wanted to, whether or not we get a September Direct is still to be determined, right? They haven't officially announced it yet. Maybe by the time we record next week, there will have been. Who knows? But either way, Overwatch is it's a thing that I'm happy is on as many places as possible. This might be the reason that Overwatch hasn't gone free to play yet, because I think a lot of people have sort of wondered why not do that TF2 thing, right? Sell as much as you can and then go free to play and then get a whole new player base in there. It might be because they say, why not get 2 million more sales on Switch before we do that?
I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. I'm not sure if Activision's willing to take that jump, but I think they should take that jump, because I feel like the potential for Overwatch, I think it can explode beyond what it already has, you know? I mean, it's crazy enough that it sold 30 million or so copies, but, like, imagine the player base. I mean, the biggest games in the world are free to play, you know? We are now at the point where, like, you are actually making more money as a free to play game than a boxed $60 release. And that was not a thing even just the beginning of this generation. That was not a thing, you know?
You want to really quick, I love to play these games. There was one game on the top 10 games by revenue that that had boxed release and you paid for last year. You want to guess what it was?
I didn't hear the question.
So last year, right, worldwide revenue, right? So that means money you brought in. Fortnite was number 1. Spoiler alert, right? But Fortnite is free. There was one game that you can pay for at a store for $30. Spoilers. That's how
in
much
this
it costs.
top 10,
Only
a single game.
Only a single game that you.
Am I the only one guessing? Because I figure both of you know already.
I'll just tell you.
Yeah, thank you.
If you want. It was PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. It was the one.
Okay.
Everything else was
literally
PUBG
every other game that generated the most revenue last year was a free-to-play game, you know? Which I think kind of says something about, like, where the market is now, you know? Like, it actually makes more sense nowadays for a AAA game to be free-to-play. I mean, we just saw that with Apex Legends this year, right? Like, you're even seeing the mega publishers kind of realizing, hey, I mean, this is where the money's at.
Yeah, so I mean, who knows how that trend will go, whether that will be better or worse. We had a trailer for NBA 2K this week that had literal slot machines and pachinko in it.
Nice.
So, who knows? We might continue into the hellscape that it seems the rest of the world is right now, so why not? But that is, that's for another time and another place.
Yeah, let's end on despair. I love it.
Yeah. But instead, we do have one more thing to do before we truly fall into despair, and that is looking towards the list.
The list.
when there's only one other person,
Yep,
Moose has to do it.
Yeah, I have to. I would feel bad if I was like, it was just like one excited and then me just being.
The sacrifices he makes.
Yeah.
Follow along in the
hard.
paste bin below.
Yeah.
As we turn towards last week on the list, we had Noah on a rare appearance on the news side of the podcast. Rank Mega Man 3.
He knew.
Which got to number.
We'd be talking about Mega Man this week.
He knew. He felt it. And it got to number 41 on the list. Right below Shovel Knight, another game we talked about.
Preordained.
But yeah, we are putting the finger on the scales. But this week, Ills, he actually helps you out there because that's another game you can mark off your quest. So what do you bring in this week?
I don't know.
So what are we talking about next week?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, initially I was going to add in games that we played in the old club, but since I'm the only one here from the old club, it wouldn't make sense. So I'm going to rank a game that we talked about a little bit, SteamWorld Dig.
Whoa! Oh! I like this pick.
Okay. So talk to us about SteamWorld Dig.
Yeah, I mean, it's an indie game. It came out, when was it, like 2013?
Yeah, 2013, exactly.
Yeah. It's incredibly addictive. You basically you dig straight down. You just keep going as far as as far as you can, and you basically create your own level because the direction in which you dig determines how you maneuver through the world. And if you dig too much in one direction, or you whatever, you mess up in some way, you have to go back, and it's a whole thing. But it's super cool. It's very addictive. It's very fun. You collect them, or you go back to town, sell them for upgrades and stuff like that. I played this game for basically 8 hours straight in one sitting because it was so fun. So, yeah.
Yeah, this game is dope. I mean, like, this is like secretly one of my favorite 3DS games. It's a game that, like, humble origins here. This kind of came out of nowhere. I think they had promoted it in one random direct and it just blew up, and now we see this tiny little team making, some of the most gorgeous games on the Switch, right?
Yes.
But they really started with this game, and they really nailed it in this first try, I guess they had SteamWorld Tower Defense, a whole nother thing. Never played that. Kind of want to now. But just this idea of, the loop of this game of just dig, find your way back up through the path that you created yourself, right?
Exactly.
To exchange out for cash to get more stuff to help you dig even more efficiently, and then you dig, right? And you repeat that cycle. You find crazy shit in the underground. Right?
Oh man, so much. It gets it's so fun to reach further and further lower. And
there's just something very satisfying about that, about the simplicity of this game, Yeah. I really very much like this game.
Same.
There was really it's funny. There was a game that was on the Xbox Live Indie Marketplace on the 360 called Miner Dig Deep, and it was a $1 game. It was it was an ugly game. It didn't control great, but the core concept, it was very much the same thing. You just dig into the ground, you gather resources, you take them up top, you trade them in, right? And I played that for like 20 hours, like when it was late at night and I had insomnia, because just that core concept was so satisfying. So when SteamWorld Dig came out like 5 years later and was like, oh, this is like that concept, but like so good looking, and it controls well, and it's a good video game on top of it, there was a big culmination for me in that moment. I was so happy. And like everything both of you said was true. It's a very extremely solid video game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where would you want to put it on the list, Ills?
I don't know. Any suggestions?
I was thinking like above DuckTales or like Dragon Ball Fighters. I don't know if.
So I was thinking in the Alundra space. Kirby
Alundra is 50. Okay.
Golden Sun.
Jesus, I was thinking like above Mega Man 3.
Whoa. We haven't had this in a while. We haven't had like a range of 20 spots.
That's where like I was thinking at first. Honestly, like I shit you not, like I was thinking literally like right below Shovel Knight Mega Man 3 area. But then I was like,
fucking
no,
GoldenEye is way too fucking high.
Well, sure, but like I was like, but 999 is really fucking good. Valkyria Chronicles, Final Awakening. I will agree. I've said this before, like many times at this point. I always give credit to a game for like having a vision and just executing on that concept, and then just doing pretty much. You can feel exactly what the creator wanted. You know,
yeah,
you feel that in this game. I think you do. Like this is just like a perfectly executed game.
Yeah, and there's no fat to this game. It's just
no. It's very lean. I mean, I guess, and then so in that sense, I guess you could throw at it as a con. It is pretty short, right? Personally, I don't see it as a con, but it is a pretty short game.
I mean, it's
obviously
it
varies.
And I played it for 8 hours. I feel like a pretty good time. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up playing around 6 to 8 hours or so too, but I've seen people go through it like in as little as like 4 or 5 hours. You know.
I mean, we just had somebody beat Chibi Robo in 2 hours. Come on.
I mean, and that's not even me saying. I'm just saying like just something to point out, like what people could say about the game.
For me, and I get how you can feel otherwise. I think the Punch Out for Wii has a lot of similar strengths to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I do find the core concept of figuring out the guys in Punch Out a little bit more fun.
Sure.
So I maybe put it right below Punch Out, and then, maybe, but that's where I would sort of feel with it if we're looking in that space. But if you guys put it above it, I would understand.
So I'm definitely open to anything in that range, to be honest, from where Il said all the way down to where I said.
Jesus Christ. Why did I even ask for your suggestion?
There's just a lot of good games on this list. It's hard.
There's the Fire Emblem problem. Always
I am
there.
good with it's the Fire Emblem, man. Like, goddamn.
I mean, they have no feet. Come on.
Would you...
Where's the realism there? There's no feet.
Okay, so here's my issue. Final Awakening. I said Steam World League is one of my favorite 3DS games. Final Awakening is my favorite 3DS game.
Sure.
You know.
Well, not named Kid Icarus Uprising, because
not named Kid Icarus, of course, but I'm not even gonna talk about that.
Yeah, that's
not. So that's hard. I mean, of course, Fire Emblem should be higher.
True.
Would you put it below? So would you put it above or below Valkyria Chronicles?
I would put it below. Just.
Oh god, Valkyria is too low too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would put it. I want it above Mega Man, but below Valkyria. So that's.
Well, that's a sin that'll have to be fixed later. I'm fine with putting it above Walking Dead, between Walking Dead and Punch Out.
Yeah, fine. That's fine.
I mean, there's Valkyria in the middle, but yeah.
I mean, it's a respectable area.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because we think that Valkyria should be higher, and if we move it, it'll functionally be in the same spot. I guess we put it below it,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So even if we do move Valkyria, it'll be in the same spot, basically.
So everyone
okay.
Good?
I'm cool with that.
Yeah, that's all good.
Okay.
All right. So number 45 on the list, Steam World Dig. Surrounding it, at number 43, we have Punch Out for the Wii. 44, we have Valkyria Chronicles Remastered. 45, as I said, Steam World Dig. 46, we have Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 1, another company we talked about on this podcast. And 47, Fire Emblem Awakening. We've said our thoughts on it being where it is. But that is the list. I'm going to say the line, anytime we look at the list, always, you gotta look at the nature of the beast and see what it is. But that is the podcast for this week. I want to thank you all for listening very much. Do either of you want the final phrase? I'll just throw it up for whomever.
I never want the final phrase.
I was gonna say I'll take it if Il doesn't, but okay, yeah.
I mean, Muzzy just wants to talk and talk and talk. So.
I do. I love talking. That's why I want a podcast.
For some reason.
That's why Moose wants to just have his own podcast where it's just him.
Yeah, just
he probably does.
That's the dream.
The secret. Oh man, one day we'll find that out.
He secretly narrates his whole life.
Yeah.
But if you want to find Moose Mill Secret Podcast, go to soundcloud.com/Jump Up Supercast. Also follow the Jump Up Supercast on any of your podcast services of choice, except for Spotify, because they're weird about it. But also, those sometimes can be weird, right? So you can make sure to follow us on twitter.com/Jump Up Supercast, where we go. We post whenever things go live. Sometimes Saf mostly tweets from it. What Saf says is not what we say. Let's make that clear, obviously. It does not speak for us. But it's also the case on Instagram, where sometimes you can, Brandon will post things at instagram.com/Jump Up Supercast. Once again, Brandon doesn't speak for us there either. That's Brandon, my friends. But until then, every other Thursday we have the Jump Up Supercast Game Club. Last week we had Terranigma. Really interesting conversation. Great game. Very interesting game. Was really excited to talk about it. And then coming up next week we have Snatcher from Brandon's choice on the from the mind of Hideo Kojima. And so I'm sure we'll have plenty to say about that. So you can always make sure to not miss it by following everywhere I said. But now, Muzamil, your final phrase.
So, we talked about free-to-play games for just like a little bit. And honestly, we could probably have a whole segment on that. Maybe a whole podcast episode on that. But Il said something, and I just don't disagree. I just don't agree with this. He said, like, on a depressing note, he said. And I don't think that free-to-play is inherently bad. I think that free-to-play is actually, I think it's pretty cool that, like, I can play Fortnite, and it's this crazy big game that changes every week and has all sorts of crazy stuff, and I don't have to spend a dime if I don't want to. It's purely cosmetic. Sure, you can do it wrong, but I don't think we should view free-to-play as inherently bad. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk.